Welcome to the Spirit of Business, episode number 47, Peaceful in the Present, with Matt Murphy and Sarah McCrum.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Matt.
There's something that has been a bit of a sensation for me over the last few days that I've noticed, and it's around this concept of peaceful in the present. It's something that we all aspire to do, or it's something that I aspire to do in terms of being a lot more peaceful and content in my life. And the concept around sort of, being present is something that I've always aspired to. And I know that's something that, is a thing, that people talk about. And because they talk about the fact that if you're too far in the future or in the past, then that's sometimes not a good thing. So to be present. And I've noticed that I've been present a lot lately. And I noticed that I'm actually feeling a lot more contented and calm about it. And then I start to think about that a little bit more, which is probably not a good idea, because I start to think about, hang on a minute, should I feel this way? Or is this a good thing or a bad thing? And I start to analyze it. And then feelings of guilt creep in because I think, well, I should be working harder and I should be doing this and I shouldn't just be sort of meandering along sort of type principle. And I thought it was a good topic for us to talk about today, because it's what I've aspired to do. And I know other people aspire to do it as well. But when you're doing it, it feels good. But then all these other feelings come up, and that's when it starts to become confusing. So I'd like to sort of maybe unpack that a little bit today with you, if that's possible.
I actually think it's very interesting to talk about this whole notion about peace. People talk about wanting inner peace, which is really the same thing as you're talking about. And very often when peace happens to them, when they actually, I don't think of it as an achievement, but when it arrives, just like you said, sometimes they think, oh my goodness, there's something wrong, or this is really boring, or there's nothing happening, or I'm not thinking about anything. And they don't realize that that's peace. And they think that there's something wrong. And that's quite a common phenomenon. I've actually been reading a book recently about what's called fundamental well-being, which is where you kind of enter a state of pretty much permanent well-being. And people often don't know that it's happened to them. They don't realize.
Yeah, so it's I'm glad that I'm not the only one that feels that particular way. And I know that, and one of the reasons why I like to talk about things and why people talk to me about things is because I can normalize, especially for business owners, I can normalize their situation, say, look, that's pretty normal for this particular stage of business that you're at, and it makes people feel better. And talking to you about this just made me feel a bit better that I'm not the only person that starts to get into these mind games about what's actually occurring and what's happening. But I'd like to understand it a bit more, because it is a good feeling, because you start to feel more peaceful and calm, which I think is always a good place to be. But then thoughts around, am I just wasting time? Am I just drifting along? And should I be working harder? Should I be stressed more about something or worried about it? Is the whole world going to collapse if I don't sort of keep apply myself and keep pushing and keep thinking about the business? And am I in denial? All these really sort of thoughts start to come into it, and I'm consciously saying about all the weird stuff that goes on, because I think that other people might feel the same way.
Yeah, it's really so important, because generally speaking, we have been wired in a way through media and through cultural expectations to live rather a seesaw life, either high or low. So a very emotionally reactive life on the whole, and especially a very emotionally stimulated life. So if we're not feeling very much, or we're feeling quite neutral, it feels like there's nothing going on. There's no drama. And a lot of people are quite hooked into drama. And when the drama isn't there, it feels like there's something missing. But actually, that drama is a kind of addiction to a feeling that is not really natural or neutral. It's we can talk about it being a forced. There's like the emotions are forced. You can be over positive, when people get really excited, and you can feel it. It's the kind of behavior that would get a dog going crazy, wagging its tail and getting totally overexcited. And we know what happens when you do that with dogs. The same thing happens with children. People stimulate them to the point where they're overexcited, and almost always tears come later. The balance to that, so to speak, is that people feel over negative, and it's a kind of forced negative. And then they get angry and they get upset and they get frustrated and all these other different kinds of feelings. And what you're describing is what people have trained 30 years to get to, that kind of peaceful in the present. That's what monks used to train for. That's what they did all those meditations for, was to be peaceful in the present and for their mind to be clear or empty, they say sometimes, and to not be stressing about anything, and to have this very neutral kind of feeling, which is actually a very good feeling when you get used to it. But it feels strange if you're used to having that forced kind of false positive or forced and false negative.
It makes a lot of sense. The overwhelming bit about me when I connect back into being a business owner is that I spend most of my life as a business owner planning for the future, or being worried about something that's going to happen in the future, and always having a contingency or a plan to ensure that it doesn't actually occur, or if it does occur, then I know how to handle it. And so my mind is a lot in the future and projecting and thinking about things. And so therefore, if I think about that when I'm just in the present, probably one of the concerns about me in business is that I'm not doing that. And so therefore, am I being irresponsible around from a business perspective because I'm not planning for things that could occur, or that, so then things will catch me off guard in the next sort of 3, 6, 12 months, because I'm always thinking about, okay, well, what's our next 3 months look like now, next 6 months looks like, what I have to be worried about, what I have to be concerned about. And so the one of the emotions that comes in when I'm feeling more in the present is this worry, this almost like guilt or worry that I'm not actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing as a business owner. And that's about being concerned or thinking about or planning for the future.
There are two really important things about this. The first one is that I'm quite sure that you haven't completely forgotten about the next 3 months or the next 6 months or the next 12 months. There's no way.
Not. But maybe it's only because I've had relief for 2 days and
yeah, exactly. But how much time do you need to think about your next 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months? Honestly, you don't need to think about that all day, every day. That's not going to do any good for any business. Like, do your bit of planning, look at what could go wrong and what could go right, work it out, then you're done. You don't need to spend the next 3 months thinking about it still. That's the first thing. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing, and this is what's so important, which so many people don't realize, is that how you feel in the present is the most significant influence on how things turn out in the future. So the worst thing you can do is look forward, think about all the things could go wrong, and worry about them now. Because at the level of energy, which is what I work with all the time, what you are literally doing, let's say with the vibration of who you are, the vibration of your brainwaves, if you want to put it that way, is sending out, projecting into the future that things are going to go wrong. You're literally giving energy, paying attention to and giving energy to things going wrong in the future. So that's the worst thing that you can do. The best thing you can do is feel really good in the present, because then you're putting out positive vibes, so to speak. You're actually projecting into the future. If you can think about the future and look ahead, but be peaceful in the present, that is like the golden, that's the kind of golden place in terms of something like business. If you want to be Eckhart Tolle and sit on a park bench for 3 years, you can just be peaceful in the present and forget about looking at the future. Most of us either don't want to or don't have the luxury to do that. We have something else that. But if you're in business, that's just so perfect to be able to look ahead creatively. So it's more like I'm shaping and influencing the future through this very pleasant, it's not like very exciting feeling, but this kind of pleasant, neutral, peaceful place where I am at the moment. And there's nothing to worry about. There's no need to be stressed. And in fact, to be stressed would make my future worse. So why on earth would I spend time doing it?
Makes a huge amount of sense. And given that, we talk about superpowers and the fact that I'm a visual manifester in terms of, if I want something to occur, then I've got a greater chance for it to turn up by focusing on that. Makes sense that this concern around worrying. And the reality is I've had 30 years in business of my own business and all my clients' business, and I know how to do this. It's just once again trusting that whatever does turn up, if it did catch you off guard, which typically it's not going to, because as you said, that how much do you really need to plan? How much do you need to, because I think that we get into this obsessive loop of concern and worry about all the possible contingencies that could occur in the future. And that's probably what sends us into this anxious state, because
And look,
I've been taught.
Quite frankly, supposing in the beginning of January last year, you'd spent January thinking about COVID that you didn't know about yet. All you would have done all January is freak out. Wouldn't have made any difference whatsoever to what was actually going to happen.
I think that's a great lesson that every time you start to think about this, you go, well, did we predict COVID? No.
Exactly.
Did we get through COVID? Well, some of us struggled through COVID in terms of, I've got some clients that are business owners that, it really did severely impact upon their businesses and their health. And I have a huge amount of empathy and concern about that, and obviously spent a lot of time with them. But typically most people have navigated through the complexity of it reasonably well, or they've just found a way to keep sustaining and managing. So you're right. How much does it really help you by worrying about these particular things? And yes, I do have a plan, and I've got a strong plan for what the business is going to look like and where we're going and what we're doing, and we're on track to do these things. It is sort of, I think for me, what it's teaching me at the moment is to just trust that that's actually going to be okay, and it's okay to be like that. And every time I get one of these negative thoughts about guilt, or about I should be doing more planning or projecting or worrying or future proofing or whatever, is to go, no, that's okay. We've got it covered. We've done enough work on it, and now it's time to be more peaceful in the present.
And how many times in the last years have you called me and said, oh, somebody's resigned completely unexpectedly? It's happened. Things have happened in your business. There was a time it's like, oh, I've got this legal case. I've never had a legal case before. What on earth's going on here? But look, we dealt with it.
Yeah, we do. And we do. And that's the thing. We deal with all these particular situations, and we're always okay about it. But for some strange reason, we still catastrophize about stuff. And maybe because, yeah, so I'm very good at saying that in the third person, as you know. But I find that we do that because we've seen other people's lives, and we've gone, oh. And I remember a client recently talking to me, and this has happened a few times, where they've said, I would hate to be in a situation where I'll lose my business or I'll lose everything in my 60s. Okay. And that's a thing. And I've heard that a number of times, and I've seen people, lose their livelihoods towards the later part of their business, and where they, it devastates them from a financial perspective. And I think that there's this fear that sits there with some people, not all people, but some people, about that occurring in their businesses. And sometimes they get motivated to sell the businesses at an earlier stage because of this fear around, losing it all at some particular point in time towards the latter end of the maturity of their business.
So I have something, and I'm not an accountant, very, very obviously, and you are, so maybe you can put me straight on this. But if I heard somebody talking about that, I would wonder how they're taking care of their personal finances. Are they being responsible? Are they saving money as they run this business, so that if the business falls apart, actually they're going to be perfectly fine? Because that's the incredible opportunity you have as a business. You have control over your own money. You can make more money. You can make profit. Like, we're so lucky. If you have a business that's not doing very well, that's difficult. But I really would ask, are they being responsible? And I think a lot of business owners are not responsible about their personal finances. They put everything, they identify too much with the business, and as long as the business is going well, they think they're rich. But that's not actually true.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's multiple answers to what you're sort of saying there, and in theory, in logic, you're 100% right, but that doesn't always transcend it doesn't always play out into the situations for their business. But absolutely, the goal is always to ensure that you diversify your wealth outside your business. So as you're creating wealth inside your business, hopefully, that's also meaning that you're able to then create wealth outside the business. So if anything goes wrong in the business, then you've got a backup. And that's always, the focus is to look after the business owner or the stakeholders in the organization. And that's what we do focus on. And it's usually not logical. It's nonsensical when people start to talk like that, by the way, because
yes, I'm sure
I will then talk to them and say, well, hang on a minute. Okay, well, even if it did happen, what's the worst case scenario? Are you got enough assets to support? Oh, yeah, I'll be all right. And I
think I've heard a few of these conversations before.
Exactly. and probably at some point in time in my career, in my life, I probably would have felt the same way.
I have heard you express something similar to that, completely illogically and irrationally, I would say.
Exactly right. And so therefore, but that's a thing, because I'm not alone and other people do it, but there's a fear that actually that is there to say, I don't want that to be me.
But this is important. This is really important. So we started off talking about being peaceful in the present. If you're peaceful in the present, you don't play with those fears. It's not even interesting to play with those fears. But if you're not peaceful in the present, you know that you're not really peaceful. It's very important, I believe, and most business owners are pretty capable of being rational. They're not actually completely driven by their emotions. They have that ability. It's really important to exercise the muscle of asking whether the things that are torturing your mind and making you not peaceful and not present are actually true. And when you hear yourself circulating messages in your mind that aren't true, it's very important to say, hold on a moment, that is not true. It's not true that if I lost my business in my 60s, I would lose everything. There are circumstances in which we can lose everything, but that's not usually what people are thinking about. They're just playing with ideas in their mind. It's almost like they're afraid to be peaceful, so they're going to fill up their mind with junk.
And the other thing that you mentioned, which is right, is about this concept of responsibility. And if we're really focused on these people that probably have lost their livelihoods in their 60s, and it's not always the case, and I don't want to generalize, because some people have been unlucky and unfortunate in that has gone wrong without this particular concept. They probably haven't been responsible, and then maybe they've rolled the dice too much in terms of their 60s in their businesses, when they probably should be starting to mitigate some of their risk, or that they haven't been responsible around diversifying their wealth outside their businesses, like we spoke about. So people can project their own fears by looking at another situation that's probably got nothing to do, or no realm of reality to their current situation, is the other thing that I see too.
And that's one of the reasons why being peaceful is so important, because you don't do that. I was thinking about the people you mentioned who've had a really rough year with COVID. And I know people who've lost their businesses virtually overnight as soon as COVID started, so people in hospitality and stuff like that. And it's very, very tough. But also, even in these very difficult situations, the more we can be peaceful and not in that very kind of strong emotion, the better we can deal with it. Whether it's making a decision to make sure that at least you can pay your family expenses, which can mean putting aside a lot of pride at times, like, I'm not the person I was, I don't have this identity I had before, but I must take care of my responsibility. It's not easy to do that if you're overwhelmed by emotion, by a lack of peace. So actually this cultivation of peace is really significant, both in the ordinary moments of business when somebody can just annoy you, and then like, why let that person control you emotionally by being annoyed, through to when a real crisis does happen, and life sometimes does throw things at us out of the blue, in order to be able to respond to whatever is going on as clearly and quickly and responsibly as possible. So I feel this theme about peace and being able to be present. As you said, it really is that the greatest thing is the thing that people look for. It's the key to business in many ways, because you can easily learn business skills and you can get specialists to do the things you're not good at, but no one can live inside your own mind.
No, and I think that for me, obviously, I've had a goal to being more peaceful in business and in what I do, and I'm fortunate enough that I've run some pretty good businesses and I've been successful in what I've done, but I don't feel I've been successful personally in this peaceful and this contentment, and that's the journey that I've been on.
But you're successful now. Look, we're celebrating a success.
I think that the real challenge, though, and you just identified it then, is it's a lot easier to be peaceful and content when things are going okay in business and in your life. But when things are not going so okay in your business or your life, that you still can maintain that peaceful in the present. I think that's the ultimate. If I look at the ultimate test or the ultimate goal, is to no matter what gets thrown at you, that you're able to actually still maintain that peaceful in the presence concept, to be able to, as you say, deal with whatever's going on, which then will also help to get you to a better place, or financially, or whatever it is, because you're not sending out those negative vibrations, which is what you're speaking about before.
Well, what you're talking about is a real thing. Okay, so and that first of all, that stage of simply being peaceful in the present, just knowing inside yourself that it's going to be okay. That actually, really, whatever happens, it's okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay somehow. That's one level of it, and then that being able to be peaceful, whatever's thrown at you, that's another level. That is a real thing, and so you're in that process. You've been working towards it for quite a while. We've had many conversations about inner peace and mental peace, and how can you get all the thoughts out of your mind, kind of thing. And here you are actually experiencing a certain degree of that. And that can stabilize. It is genuinely a thing where, for many people to whom that happens, it's very, very unlikely actually that they will go back to getting really worried and really emotional about things. There's a place it can just kind of settle into it, and it becomes persistent. There'll be fluctuations, but you'll never go back to where you were.
Which is comforting, because you do get the fluctuations, because I have experienced this feeling before. It's not the first time, but you do go through emotional roller coasters in things, and that's what I'm saying is to I think that the ultimate goal is to maintain the stability of that, no matter what, and so you don't go through these violent reactions. And I still, even up to last year, go through stages of burnout in business, because you're so focused, especially last year when it was pretty challenging in terms of a lot of things that were thrown at us. But these things helped us to build resilience in trust, because we know we can get through them for the next thing. You go, well, I dealt with that. Like you said, I dealt with COVID. So, throw something else at me to see whether
What are you asking for there?
No, I'm not. I'm not asking for anything.
Are you sure?
What I'm saying is that it gives us confidence. And I still, every time we have these sorts of conversations, the word trust comes up a lot for me, is that trust that we are able to manage it, we are able to deal with it, we are able to get through, we are able to get back to that place of feeling comfortable and peaceful in the present. And I think that these conversations are great, because it helps to remind me about these things, and hopefully it reminds other people too, where it brings it from that, that trust and confidence that these things are possible and achievable and maintainable.
Yeah. I don't know if it's actually true that Einstein said something like, I'm not a very good quoter, but something like the big question that everybody needs to face at some point is whether life is fundamentally benign or not. And when you talk about trust, I think that's really what we're talking about. There comes a point in your life where you have to decide, like, is life fundamentally against me or for me? And my decision is that life is kind of made out of this actually very loving, beautiful energy. And so it's not against me. I can feel that it's against me, maybe because sometimes I'm against it, or I have experienced that. But life itself is not fundamentally against me, even when things happen that I don't like. You can make the other decision. The problem about making the decision that life is against me is it's really uncomfortable and really unpleasant. If you make the decision that life is somehow on my side or it's something beautiful, it opens up a curiosity, because there are times when you don't really feel that, but it makes you curious. So if it's beautiful, what's going on at the moment? I don't feel good, but it kind of opens up your curiosity, and you discover more and more how beautiful it is. If you decide it's against you, you tend to discover how more and more against you it is. But the beautiful version, or however you want to frame it, tends to seem to be more true. It's like the further you go with it, the more true it appears to be. And therefore, I would favor exploring that option.
Which comes back to that concept of, whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, whether you've got victim mentality, all those sorts of things sort of conjure up when you're talking about these concepts. And I think, there's been probably periods in my life and other people's lives that I've observed where you go through periods of being pessimistic about the world and about what's going on, and then optimistic about the world and what's going on around you. Obviously, it's far better to be optimistic about it, because that's where you will naturally feel that you can get through these particular situations. It's when the pessimism kicks in, and the grief and the overwhelm and the I'm not sure I can get through this sort of type scenario. That's when life becomes very difficult, and we suffer in pretty bad places when that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can be optimistic, or I like to look at it as being creative. There are times in life when it's not easy to be optimistic. Sometimes you see things happening. Sometimes I see things happening. It's like it's hard to be optimistic. But what that brings out in me more than is like creativity. If I see things that are not going the way I want, and we've had a lot of examples of that in the last year with the whole COVID thing, where it's hard to understand at times what's going on. And sometimes it looks really like it's not going in a good direction. But for me, if I can respond creatively, it pulls out of me more resources to say, okay, well, if I don't like that, what can I do to contribute to something better? And I think you can only do that if you have a degree of peace. Otherwise, it's easy to become a victim of what's going on, or it's easy to feel pessimistic when times are very challenging. So again, we just come back again and again and again to this peaceful in the present, that opens up so much possibility, that it really is something worth going after.
Absolutely. One of the things I just wanted to address when you were talking about that is that the concept of adversity, when something happens to you that is difficult or uncomfortable and creates a problem, then that's, you talk about that creativity, and that creativity is about problem solving. A problem has arisen, or a concern has arisen, or something is adversely affecting you, and then you apply your creativity to overcome that, which is, unless you had that adversity, unless you had that problem, then you would never have been able to have that ability to solve it or to move forward. And I think that's kind of the rich tapestry of life. If you never faced that adversity, you'd never be able to apply your ability, and it feels good when you're able to do that, when you're able to get through something or achieve something or solve a problem, and especially in business where you can see the results of that, then I think that's great. But and I love a formula, but part of the formula I can see with this conversation is that if you're able to do that in a calm way, that when that adversity arises and that, whatever's thrown at you arises, and you're able to sort of be peaceful and go through that process, would be a far better way of dealing with it in that creative time than it would be if you're stressed and worried about what's going on. It's obvious, I know, but it's helpful to remember that too as part of this.
It's obvious, but it's not obvious because it's not what most people do. And I've seen some really stunning examples of that, where people were freaking out about something, really freaking out about something, and you show them how to be peaceful about it. I've seen it in several really serious legal cases where instead of doing the usual thing and being unbelievably stressed, they made peace every single day. And the judgments that judges have given in those situations, the way they have gone with that person who made peace in their life around it, they're extraordinary. I was talking to a lawyer this morning, and she has the same experience. She had just this week a judge that dropped a case completely out of the blue, just because they came at it. It appears like they just came at it without the usual energy around it. It was an amazing result for her. I've seen this happen so many times, not just legal cases, but any more serious things. I've seen that the moment somebody drops the drama and decides to make peace in the situation, everything changes for the better. And it doesn't matter how hard it is, that is something worth learning.
I love this concept that you're talking about. I love the word drama because it's, it creates such a story or evokes such a picture in your mind. And then I also love the concept of making peace with something, is because they're physical things that you can do, like to drop the drama and to make peace. You're dropping something and you're making something. So therefore there's an actual activity that goes along with that, which is great. And then when you do that, you generally feel good about it. If you're dropping something and you're making something, then you're actually moving forward, and there's that progression there, and then that, towards that peaceful moment. And you know that I'm a very practical person. I like to be able to do things to be able to achieve something. You've sort of started to help put it into play a bit of a formula around how you do these things.
Yeah, it is really like that. I've just literally taught people to relax every day. Whatever, when these awful things are going on, they used to come and see us always because there was something terrible happening in their life. People don't come and see you because life's lovely. No. So we're always dealing with these awful dramas. I had a business in London, and it was like that, all these men with kind of, I don't know, marriage problems and business problems and dramas all over the place. And like people whose wives would accuse them of trying to murder them and stuff like that, which is completely untrue. Crazy stuff. And it's just like, okay, relax. And every single day they come in with a new version of the drama, and by the end of the session it's like, okay, I'm feeling great now. Next day, drama, I'm feeling great now. But the funny thing is that what I learned from that is you don't have to be perfect at the peace bit, you just need to be willing. And that's a very important thing to understand, because it's really easy to actually make yourself very unpeaceful by saying, I'm not peaceful enough, I'm not good enough at this, it's not going to work. Actually, I haven't found it's about good enough. I've found that it's about being willing to take a different approach, being willing to engage with the possibility that instead of following the drama route, you could become peaceful, or you could relax about it, and that you could see things differently. And I think if the willingness is there, you can have really bad days along the way and good days. And you can have moments where you think, I've lost it, I'm no use, and all of that stuff. But they don't really matter. It's really interesting. It's actually the intention and the willingness and the good-heartedness that seems to matter.
When you were talking about that situation with running the business in London with these particular people, and some of and I call them events that are going on in their lives, those events might be, they're actual things that are occurring, and they're events,
real.
they're things, right? They're real, okay. but the drama element is how you respond to it, really, at the end of the day, when we think about it. It's not necessarily that the event, you're making the event to go away. The event's still real and it exists, but it's just about how you engage with the event, in terms of how peaceful you can become with it.
And look, if something really tough happens, no one's expected to be peaceful immediately. Though I do remember, for example, getting a letter from the Education Authority in New Zealand, which was basically a letter saying that we think that we have reason to withdraw all your accreditation, registration, everything that we totally depended on as a business. And within 2 minutes of it, I had to walk onto a stage and teach a class. And I still remember that moment where I read this thing where literally it was like the ground was falling away beneath my feet and saying, okay, take a deep breath. Okay, and just walk into the room as though nothing was happening at all. So I think we need to have that ability at times. And we also need to be able to, it's not about crushing your response. It's about being able to see that this is happening and really mustering your fullest resources to be able to respond. And your resources are more powerful when you're peaceful than they are when you're caught in the drama. So I think it's about maturing and becoming wiser as a human being as well.
Agreed. The only thing that I started to think about then when you're talking is around this concept of petitioning things, because clearly what you just demonstrated then about having to, you had an event that occurred, created an emotion in you, and then you had to quickly park that for a minute to be able to then go and do what you have to do. That's pretty much you've just, what I have to do on a daily basis because I have to interact with so many different people and there's so many things that might be going on outside of that you can't show any of that to the people that you're engaging with because it's unfair to them. It's not what you're paid to do.
It's not relevant to them.
It's not relevant to them. But this concept of parking things or partitioning them in your brain or whatever it actually occurs. But I think that the concept that I wanted to talk about then was that you're not just parking them to forget about them or to not worry about them or to crush them, as you say. It's to go back and address them, but you just got this concept where you can't deal with that particular thing right now because you've got something that's more important to do at that particular point in time. That's the concept that you're talking about.
Absolutely, because it is very important. It's really tempting to try to suppress those kinds of things and shove them away and pretend they're not happening. And you see that with people who pretend they're in debt and they don't want to look at their bills, for example, or they don't want to look at their bank account. Really, really crazy stuff. We need to deal with the facts and we need to deal with the feelings. It's useful to know that the direction is peace.
Well, I think that that was almost a full stop on the end of that one when you just said that. That it's the direction is peace, and it certainly is. I think, and for me, it's the goal is to being peaceful in the present, even in times of real adversity. And I think that that's when I'll feel that I've achieved, what I really want to achieve in life is to know that I'm able to do that.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing to be able to do. It's so beautiful to be peaceful. Once you get used to it, just to go back right to where you started, once you get used to it and you stop having those thoughts that there's something wrong and it's too quiet and there's nothing going on, and actually take the time to feel what's there instead of all that drama and noise, and you realize that in all that quietness and not so much going on, there's a lot going on, because there's actually space then for beauty, there's space for joy, there's space for the things that we love as human beings. There's room to start to feel and experience all of that. And that's why it's worth that, keeping going.
And as I said, what these conversations do is help stay on track to that and not succumb to the natural wiring of where you've been in the past, where you go back to that. It's just to resist it and fight it to a degree, to say, well, I'm not, okay, I know this is coming in, but I'm going to trust that this is the new pathway.
So since we didn't have a full stop before, we'll say it again, the direction is peace.
Okay. Well, it's been a great chat again, Sarah. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you for listening to The Spirit of Business with Matt Murphy and Sarah McCrum. We'll be back next week with another episode. You'll find the show notes with links and other useful information on our website, spiritofbusiness.live. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends.